this is super fun. I get to turn the tables and now be the one asking questions. Please welcome 4 absolute ag tech rising stars to the stage. Let's give them a warm welcome. Welcome, thanks, Ellie. Scott, thank you very much. Vijay, welcome.
I'm next
I forgot to grab one. We joked that we'd forget to grab water on
Yes,
the way up here.
absolutely. Okay, now the real fun begins. And I'm really delighted to introduce and help showcase these very talented young ag tech entrepreneurs. We have Ellie, Scott, Vijay, and Andrew. And to get us started, I'd love it if each of you would just perhaps share a bit of your background in the company that you're building. And let's start with Ellie.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. We're happy to be here as well. My name is Ellie Symes. I'm CEO of the Corp. We do data analytics on beehives to help growers ensure effective pollination. And my co-founder, Wyatt, and I have over a decade of beekeeping experience. We really come at this as beekeepers. We started one of the country's earliest university beekeeping clubs with a $3,000 research grant at Indiana University. And with that, we ended up growing that club to over 300 members in the first couple months. So after encouragement from some funders at the university, we decided to put a business idea together and enter the IU Best competition, which Scott was a huge part of. We ended up winning, so thank you, Scott.
Absolutely.
And we won a $100,000 investment, and that really got us launched. Since then, we've raised a follow-on funding round with many of those best investors and Elevate Ventures. But this year, we received a $250,000 National Science Foundation grant to research how to take our first monitoring product for backyard beekeepers to the larger commercial space. And that really gave us the ability and training to do that. So their stipulation was you have to go out and interview over 100 of your end customers. And we thought that was a waste of time because we'd spent 2 years in the industry. And we already knew that growers rent beehives to pollinate a third of the food we eat globally. But what we learned from those interviews is those hives are priced based on the size of the colony inside the hive. And the only way to determine that colony size is for the grower to pay an inspector to come out and manually open the hives and estimate, oh, it's about 8 frames of bees in there. Now, this is obviously slow and inaccurate, but opening those beehives stresses the bees out, and you lose 2 to 3 days of pollination time. So our company replaces that inspection cost by using infrared imagery and data analytics to predict the size of the colony. It's 26 times faster, more accurate because it's based on our database of over 40 million records, and non-invasive, so they don't lose any of that pollination time. Now, we're starting in the almond market in California, where 80% of the world's almonds are grown. But even though we're based here in Indiana, we're finalizing contracts with one of the largest growers in the world, Wonderful Almonds. We've had relationships with the largest processor, Blue Diamond, who I know you guys all eat, and have established relationships with the trade associations. But we stayed here in Indiana because of the investor and mentor network we've grown, but also because of all the large established companies that are here in Indiana and in the Midwest, many of whom you'll hear from today. As an investor-backed company, it's really important to build those networks and relationships with strategic partners, and this region really provides a unique opportunity to do that. So we're really happy to be here. And when Beth invited me to be on the AgriNovus board, I was really happy to be a part of growing that ecosystem for entrepreneurs like us in the Agbiosciences. It's a little bit about me and our company and our journey. I'm happy to turn it to Scott.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellie. Actually, maybe I'll chime in real quick and I'll turn it over to Scott. Ellie's remarkable. I think you can see that already. And we did create a competition at IU called BEST, which stood for Building Entrepreneurs in Software and Technology. And it was a way to really infuse entrepreneurship into the campus, School of Informatics, business, other majors throughout IU. And it was really, really a fun business plan competition. And when Ellie and her founders came in and kind of pitched B Corp, we were blown away, and really blown away by Ellie and her vision for where she was going to take the company. So we've been really honored to be an investor. And then I also should reference, Ellie was just awarded this year the Rising a Star Award through TechPoint at the Mirror Awards. So you're just a great shining example of entrepreneurship here in the state of Indiana.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott also founded his company out of a different university in the state of Indiana, I'm pretty sure Purdue. And that's okay. We like Purdue a ton as well. And Scott's building a really special company in a very hot emerging category of indoor agriculture. And boy, we heard Aaron reference that quite a few times this morning. So Scott, please share your story.
Yeah, thank you. It's truly a pleasure to be here. My background was not agriculture at all growing up. I originally worked in the oil industry, worked on refinement systems for crude oil, kerosene, and developed a really good understanding of fluid controls as a mechanical engineer. And I was really lucky when a research opportunity opened up at Purdue looking for a student to help design a hydroponic growing system on the International Space Station. I was incredibly lucky to have been selected to that study, and more importantly, met my co-founder, who at the time was my coworker, Ivan Ball. He was an electrical computer engineer. The specific study, we're identifying the right wavelength of light using LEDs to reduce the energy consumption. There's a lot of hype that indoor agriculture can significantly reduce the water consumption of agriculture, and that's true. But you're bringing in indoor light, so it's very energy inefficient. He and I kind of a little bit disappointed to see the technology only being applied to these massive factories and not this kind of back to the future home growing device that we really wanted to see happen. Started prototyping in my college apartment and realized pretty quickly that this was an expensive hobby to prototype anything, and we obviously needed capital to continue that going. And my night shift working for the Exponent delivering papers wasn't bringing enough of that. So we too went to the business plan competitions at Purdue, and they're a fantastic thing because once you take these legitimate investment dollars later in your company, it starts that irreversible investment timeline where you got to hit these milestones. But the reality is a lot of these students aren't ready, and we weren't. But that gave us the time and the capital we needed to move from the Alpha 2 prototype to the Alpha 1 to the Beta, all the way to the point that after graduation, I was able to say I was working full-time at my company along with my founder. I've since hired some employees and have sold out of the Beta units that we began selling this year. So the device that we make is called the Grow Pod. It's an aeroponic appliance the size of a dishwasher that can fit under the counter, uses about 6 to 8 gallons of water per month, and can actually grow a full head of leafy greens on a daily basis while only using about $7 of energy on a monthly basis. And the business model we have is kind of like a Keurig K-Cup on steroids with IoT, where we have seed pods and fertilizers mailed directly to the user. They plant it in the machine. It's essentially an automated greenhouse, and they have control on their own food supply. Thank you.
That's awesome, Scott. It's fantastic. In doing a bit of research for today, I watched a TED Talk that Scott gave that's on video, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. So if any of you want to learn more about what Scott's building and see a great example of a TED Talk, check it out. It was really impressive.
Thank you.
Vijay, okay, let's hear your story. And Vijay, I hope you can weave in a bit of Techstars and what an accelerator is all about, because we heard earlier Thrive coming to Indianapolis and bringing an accelerator model, which is really outstanding. And Vijay had that experience as well, so I'm hoping you might be able to weave that into your story.
Yeah, sure. Happy to be here. Thanks to Beth for inviting me. She's a fierce warrior for Indianapolis startup community. Had the pleasure of meeting her at the World Agritech conference in San Francisco earlier this year. Similarly, I didn't come from agriculture and or supply chain logistics. Former Wall Street banker, dropped everything to move to San Francisco, taught myself how to write code. Got a little bit of money for my first startup, but ran out of it really fast because I wasn't that good of an engineer. Turns out you need more than 9 months to figure that out. Got a job at Zynga and a couple other great startups to become a better engineer. And as I was doing that, I learned a little bit about supply chain and got really fascinated about how everything moves by truck, rail, and ocean containers. Studied that for 3 years, then got the opportunity to participate in the world's first kind of logistics innovation program with FedEx out of Memphis, Tennessee. So we were focusing on air cargo at the time, and about 2 weeks into the program, we met a small business manufacturer of dock equipment. And they had $1 million RFP from a potential customer in Mexico, so it was a new warehouse. But they turned down $1 million because they didn't know how to do the export documents. And this blew our mind. About 2 months later, we met this organization called Louis Dreyfus. At the time, the only Dreyfus we knew was the actress from Seinfeld. But it turns out they were having, generating these trade docs was costing them as well. And then that's when the light bulb hit, and we said, wait a minute, you're telling me this $30 billion global ag merchant has the same problem as a 15-person small business? And then That's where TradeLanes was born. Since then, we became subject matter experts in not only agriculture, but the agricultural value chain. We had to in order to get our foot in the door. So at TradeLanes, we eliminate the manual paperwork needed to ship ocean containers. And it's this manual paperwork that dictates who owns the containers, when the goods can pass through customs, and when payment can be collected. The problem is that the error rate on these documents costs exporters over $300 billion a year. And so we've built this digital document room that starts with a contract between buyer and seller to booking freight. At every step of the value chain, we collect more information about that shipment, creating a single source of truth for every shipment. And that single source of truth eliminates document error rates, removes days from the supply chain, and saves exporters up to 80% on trade management. Most importantly, by leveraging our platform, exporters can get paid 30 days faster. Over the summer, we were lucky enough to participate in the Techstars Farm to Fork program, sponsored by Cargill and Ecolab. Actually, before I get into that, even though we started the company in San Francisco, the last 2-3 years, I've spent all in the Midwest. I've driven more farmland miles than I ever expected to in my career, and went past the covered bridges of Madison County, just really cool stuff like that. But looked at the backbone of what drives the U.S. economy. Companies that export grow faster, and ultimately our mission is to give the tools of the big guys to the little guys, so that you can grow your business faster, hire more people, and increase the standard of living in your local community. And by spending all that time in the Midwest, we got closer to customers, learned more about the problems that we're solving, and we're able to build better product to solve those problems. That's what got us into the Techstars Accelerator Farm to Fork. And by doing that, it was a game changer. The access that we had with global merchants, not only just at the executive level, but at the farm level. Those insights, surrounding ourselves with the best. Just like Scott was saying in his journey to create Exact Target, so we surrounded ourselves with the best and the brightest. And I kind of put things into 3 buckets. There's these things I know, these things I don't know, but then there's this third bucket of I don't know.
Exactly. When you get started, that can be a big bucket.
It is a huge bucket. And the faster you can surround yourself with people who can identify the things you don't know, the faster you learn, the faster you solve problems, and the faster you can grow your company.
Yeah, that's awesome, Vijay. I'm really excited that with the Thrive announcement this morning, and then just a quick little sidebar on Techstars. So Techstars is one of the best, if not the best, accelerator globally. They have 45 to 50 programs all around the world. And when we've looked at our indie tech ecosystem, we've lacked an accelerator. And so delighted that just even over the last 3 months, Techstars has announced 2 accelerators here in Indy. One with the Heritage Group in advanced material science, and one in sports. And one of the nonprofit hats I wear is chairing the Indiana Sports Corp. And we've got this incredible 3-4 decade history in sports, and now we're growing tech sector, and we're going to pull the 2 together with Techstars Sports. So this summer will be the first sports tech accelerator across the global Techstars network here in Indy, with corporate partners like the NCAA, Pacers, Colts, and the Motor Speedway. So a little sidebar around sports tech, but I think it's a blueprint for what we are doing, can be doing, and bringing ag and tech together in a really unique way here in Indiana. So thank you for sharing that story, Vijay. And then Andrew has really a really remarkable story, and kind of 2 companies that he's had a hand in starting. And then I was thinking earlier when Mitch was describing my background and the big risk I took of moving my wife and 2 kids from Chicago to Indiana, that felt like a big leap. Andrew's doing the same, but he's actually moving to Uganda. So that's an entirely different level. So you've got to tell us about that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with Quantified Ag. So about 3.5 years ago, I met a guy when I was doing my master's. He was actually kind of the tech guru for the university, and I was at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And so there's a lot of scientists that in the ag department specifically that get all these ideas and have no idea how to build them. So my partner Vijay was this jack of all trades for tech, and he would put all these things together. And then one day he went to a feedlot and he said, "Hey, we can monitor all these cattle with sensors." And so I was doing a master's at the time, focused on African food development. And he came into my office and said, hey, you're the cattle guy. Everybody says I got to talk to you. Start this company with me. So we started Quantified Ag, brought in our CTO, who is a very skilled programmer and developer. And yeah, it's been a 3.5-year journey, but we've gone through kind of all the iterations of development and design, and now we have on the market some of the first Fitbit for cows. So we make a smart ear tag that tells you the health in real time. And so we're launching that in the US and Australia in 2019 with our new strategic partner, Merck Animal Health. So that's kind of a big step that we made in that journey. About 11 months ago, because I had always had this African food thing in the back of my mind, and I've been there a ton of times, and I've done consulting over there on the side. About 11 months ago, I had a good friend of mine who is another consultant say, hey, the one U.S. firm in Uganda is moving out, and I'm staying, and a couple global directors of some big farm implement companies who we're friends with basically told him, you need to hire Andrew or be a partner with him, and you guys need to start a new company. And so we looked at the market, we looked at all the models of consulting and development, and decided to launch a new company. So in February 1st is our filing date of 2018. We launched AgVision International, and that is a ag development and management company for East Africa. So it focuses really on basically, field to fork development of every step of the value chain, starting with the farmer, and then going through production, processing, packaging, all the way to retail and branded products for a market that literally has 2 or 3 brands. So the bucket, though, I feel I really wanted to comment on your comment on the bucket of you don't know what you don't know. Like, I don't know anything, I feel like. I was the non-tech guy in a tech startup, and now I'm the non-African in an African startup. So, yeah, that's a little bit of my journey and where our companies are at.
When are you moving?
I moved January 9th, and then we have to come back in April to have a baby, our third. But yeah, my wife's really excited for the journey, and we're taking other people with us. So we just hired a COO of a major grain trading corporation. We just hired a pilot because we have to develop a fleet of spray planes to be able to control pests on a lot of our customers' properties. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, kind of leaning into what we don't know and trying to build out an entire value chain for a country. So.
Wow, good luck. That's exciting. That's incredible, Andrew. It was really interesting in the world of startups, when you develop a new idea, and I think even as you get to be a more mature business, trying to be really concise around kind of who you are and what you do is more difficult than you think. And Fitbit for cows that's as tight of a description as I've heard, and it really paints the picture, which is powerful. But I find that's an element we work on quite actively with our young companies and entrepreneurs, is really just getting very tight on messaging and value prop and describing what we do. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Background and the really compelling companies all of you are building. Whole variety of topics I'd like to ask you about, and then we'll open it up for questions as well. Why don't we first start with team? You know, Mitch really asked me quite a bit about team culture, chemistry between co-founders. I'd love to get a sense of, you know, what you've looked for in your co-founders or early hires and how you thought about, you know, culture kind of from the beginning. And if you don't mind, Ellie, we'll start with you and kind of work our way down as well. And I'd also love for you to touch on kind of the dual meaning of B Corp.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So you're exactly right. Team is everything. It's the people you're in the trenches with building the company. And I'm very fortunate to have Wyatt by my side. We've worked together now for, oh gosh, I'm going to mess this up. I think it's over 5 years, almost 8 years. We've worked together now for a long time. And in that time, we've spent a lot of time learning each other's styles. And that's not something that comes easily. In a lot of these relationships, I think you start off with a good chemistry, but if you're really in the trenches, you've got to build it. So we've spent a lot of time doing that and have learned that we're a really good yin and yang as founders. So while I'm obviously the outspoken person that likes to talk to people and manage most of the sales and fundraising, Wyatt is incredible at planning for everything. He is so detail-oriented and really balances us out that way. We needed to bring on technical people to our team really early on. So like you guys, I'm also not a technical founder. I was not in the business school or in the School of Informatics. I was actually at SPIA, which is the Policy and Environmental School. And we spent a lot of time doing that raise or that hire. We were very careful about our first technical hire and found an incredible one in Gretchen, who's our data scientist. And we've since hired an additional data scientist, Gleb, who was a graduate of IU. Those two are incredible, and Wyatt and I have taken the lessons we've learned in our partnership and working together and grown that in those two. And we love seeing them work together. Yesterday, they actually were co-coding together. We were asking them questions about what that was about, and they told us how much they learned, not just about each other's styles while doing that, but they actually got better at their skills. So we love the teamwork element of our company. And then I'll touch on the B Corp.
Great.
So when we were founding the company, 2 weeks after we met the funders at the university, which were board members of the IU Foundation that encouraged us to start the company, we're meeting together, and being from SPIA, we weren't sure with our model whether we should be a nonprofit or a for-profit. And the funders were interested in anything we wanted to do. So as we were talking about the business model, one of your entrepreneurs, Haley Altman, was actually working at Ice Miller at the time, and she was on the call, and she brought up, hey, have you guys heard about benefit corporations? And it clicked. It is still a for-profit, but your social mission is ingrained in your company and won't change. And that was really important to us, being in the beekeeping industry where we've seen issues with population decline, and being who we were as SPIA students that really believe in doing good and doing well. So after Haley said that, another member said, well, let's be the B Corp and a B Corp. So it's a really nerdy pun if you know a lot about the tax code, but that's sort of the background there. And then another tie back to High Alpha and the things you guys have done. Haley obviously then went on to start Doxley, which is one of Scott's growing companies at High Alpha.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Many of the most, I'd say, progressive and environmentally oriented companies in the world are all B Corps, Ben & Jerry's and many, many others. So the dual meaning that you have, I think, is really quite special.
Thank you.
That's great. And I'm sure it'll be a big part of your culture as you grow the team. Mm-hmm. So Scott, perhaps same thing for you. I'd love to understand kind of co-founder, early team members, and then maybe also sprinkle in a little bit of just kind of where you see indoor agriculture going.
Right. From the beginning, I don't think I even really appreciated how good we had it. I had a great co-founder who was a friend, and then just kind of ended up turning into a business when we realized it's had to make money. So from the beginning, I didn't really understand the importance of culture as a technical co-founder, because to me it was either you had the technical skills or you didn't. It was one of the two.
Right.
And we quickly realized after we got some funding from the AgCelerator event at Purdue and we started hiring people that that's not the case. And for me, it's humble, hungry, smart, and in that order. Humility, that there's been a lot of instances where I've been wrong about aspects. And I hope people aren't afraid to come up to me and tell me, you're wrong, and you're going to crash this company if we don't change this course. And that's something that I think people just don't really appreciate enough, that it's not the arrogance factor, it's that you're almost hungry to be wrong. You want to find these errors and knock them out as soon as possible. After that, I mean, the hunger, you got to have a legitimate drive. You got to have some connection to the technology. You want to have some experience in your life that you can say that this is going to truly help people. And then smart, the technical proficiency follows at the end. And when it's not in that order, you kind of get this conflicting mesh of like political agendas, and it can just get really, really complicated. So we're 3 full-time employees right now. We have about 10 independent contractors working with us at the moment. But that's been one of the best strategies for us, is to start with independent contractors, let someone see whether or not they have the skills we need. And when it's top talent, we don't let them leave. That's when I latch out the W-4s and we try and keep a more permanent relationship. But MIT has an open ag program where they have a lot of technical students, almost hobbyists like we were, posting their open source software about indoor growing systems online. So there's no better way than to just literally go through their source libraries and weed out talent there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Scott. It's interesting, the contractor element. And, Aaron referenced earlier that internships are an amazing way to kind of grow talent and kind of test chemistry and skill set, and then hopefully they become full-time employees, and contractors are a similar strategy. So that's great. That's great. Vijay, how about you? What are some of your learnings along the way around culture and team building?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ultimately, I've recently come to the realization that the team is everything. So I started off with a co-founder, but he had a 4-year-old daughter at the time, couldn't make this financial sacrifice. So for a couple of years, I was a single founder. One of the earliest friends and family investors is a personal friend, and he's a great sales guy, and he used to be in solar, so he understood the process, like the pain of exporting. And then a buddy of mine who hired me to do a gig for him, to do a contract gig for a Fortune 500 company before I started TradeLanes, is my head of product. So luckily, I'd worked or been longtime friends with both of my, I'll just call them co-founders. And I think what we look for is, the first thing is curiosity. And like you were talking about, some connection to the problem that we're solving. And so just being curious about that, because if you're curious about that, you're going to want to solve problems, and you're going to want to learn. And this journey is, the faster you learn, the faster you solve problems, and then the more impact we can have on our customers. I think the second one is just persistence. Things never work out the first time you try it. So you got to keep plugging away. And if you don't like the word no, or you don't like failure, this is going to be a really tough thing to do, especially at this early age, or early age. Freudian slip, maybe. And so it's hard to interview for that, but I think part of it is we actually have kind of a longer interview process. We're not quick to hire. We're quick to unhire. The other piece of that is, we have tried this model where you start off with a contractor, do like a 90-day stint. It's harder if you're trying to find, if you're trying to recruit from people who have full-time jobs. But the contractor model works really well. And then I think the third piece is integrity. The scenario I paint is, do everything as if your grandmother was looking over your shoulder. And I think that goes for just not only our interactions as a team, but with our customers, our stakeholders, and anybody that's outside of our company. So I think those are the first three. Those are the core kind of leadership principles that we look for, our core values. And then like some leadership principles are things like building trust, disagree and commit. Some of the things where, kind of building on what you talked about, you're not always going to know. I actually really excited when I'm wrong. Because I know I'm wrong a lot, but either I'll admit it after the fact, but like when it happens in a meeting, then I know that we're setting the right culture and we're setting the right atmosphere to push the boundaries.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Vijay. When we're sort of starting new companies, once you kind of hire the founding team and you're very focused on build a product, early customer development, and then also building your team, and then culture, and values start to take shape. And we work a lot with our young companies on creating core values and creating 3, 4, 5, and creating values that are really unique and speak to the identity of the company. And one of my favorite examples, and you made me think of it, Vijay, is a company called Campaign Monitor in San Francisco, offices in San Francisco and Australia, and one of their core values is make mom proud. And mom really with a nod toward their Australian founding and culture, but make your mom, or grandmother proud. That's a really powerful core value. I mean, that really, kind of drives a lot of thinking and probably the right behavior as well. And then one other story I wanted to just share really quickly around curiosity in the beginner's mind. So, as Mitch referenced, we were acquired by Salesforce in summer of 2013, and I stayed with Salesforce for a year, integrating the company and running the marketing cloud, and had the privilege of working for the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, who's just an incredible, iconic visionary within our industry. And I was, unsure what it was going to be like to have a boss for the first time in many years, and in particular one as kind of famous and notable as Mark. And he came to Indianapolis, and we were going to do our first one-on-one. And he's a phenomenal visionary, but also a great manager. We had weekly one-on-ones where we focused on our 3 top priorities. So this is my first one-on-one, and we were to meet over at the Conrad Hotel. So I run over the Conrad, nervous, anxious. First time I've really had a boss in kind of many years. And Mark, he wasn't there. He was nowhere to be found. And I'm kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. And his assistant Joe, he's over at the mall. Why don't you go over and meet him? And I was like, he's at the mall? And he's like, yeah, he's over at Circle Center. It's like, huh? Really? And he's like, well, why don't you go over and maybe you guys do like a walking one-on-one? And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. So sure enough, I go over to the mall, and Mark, over 10,000 employees running a multi-billion-dollar company, he's actually in the AT&T store interviewing a sales associate about their IoT and connected home products. And the sales associate had no idea who she was speaking with, and it was just pure curiosity. It was just pure learning, beginner's mind. I want to learn about connected home and where IoT is going, and he's doing it in a shopping mall at their level of company scale. That was really impressive to me. It was kind of a reminder that I need to be more curious, and you need to have the beginner's mind at like all stages, right? That was really something. So I'm glad you referenced that, Vijay. Andrew, how about you? What are some of your learnings or kind of guiding principles around team and culture?
I definitely say with AgVision International, we look for people that kind of have a deeper yearning, and I use my wife as kind of the ultimate sounding board for anybody that's going to be a high-level employee. They have to pass her test. She has better intuition than I do, so I don't try and overstep that boundary. But when I was starting to bring on some of the partners in AgVision, it's Africa, and guys that have been there a long time are pretty rough around the edges and pretty scrappy, but can be off-putting to a very politically correct American. So I bring my wife over last summer as we're kind of finalizing some of the company documents, and the one guy that I'm terrified she's going to hate, she just falls in love with him. She's like, he's got to be a partner. Like, write him in. Like, he's in for the long haul. I was like, okay, perfect, great, we're off and running. So, I mean, my main co-founder, they've always been open communication between him and I, and so as we bring those people on, with him, it's becoming more like an actual like family bond, like we're brothers in this, just because that's the level our relationship's gotten to over the past several years. But with every new partner, we know they're really anxious to kind of come in and please us and work to our level. And when they're coming in and they're saying, I want to be in that inner circle. Like, we just hired he's a COO of a major corporation, and he's bored out of his mind. And he wants to go and kind of do something unique. He wants to his life goal is to feed the world, and he doesn't see that he's doing that in the Midwest. I would argue with him that he probably is, but he wants more of an adventure. And he's a really high-integrity guy that's just gotten really burned out with corporate America. And so he's coming to us, and as we're bringing him into this process, it's our hiring process is very long, because I then have to send them overseas with their family. But as we're bringing him into this process, he's texting me every day. He's like, what's going on today? What's going on? And I'm like, just calm down. We've got your timeline. You're in the team. You're part of what we're doing. And he's like, I feel so left out. I have to be there. He's like, I might just get my wife to move 6 months early. And I'm like, okay, whoa. So those are the kind of people we're trying to attract. And we've been very fortunate in Nebraska. We've been very fortunate kind of in the Midwest in general. We've been pulling a lot of people out of Kansas and Iowa and Texas. And, young people that are entrepreneurially minded. A lot of them come from farming backgrounds. And so a lot of times if they're young enough, I'll meet their parents, because their parents are like, why are you sending my kid to Africa? Right. Which gives me a little bit of insight into their work ethic and their upbringing. And kind of some of that integrity level as well.
It's a full family interview. Yeah, oh, yeah. That's excellent.
What have you told your parents you're doing in Africa?
Right.
Have you told your parents? So that's been a very interesting journey in that. How do you build a team that is going to span 2 continents, but we're still a very young company? And then we're also integrating. So one of our big strategic partners is probably going to be building one of the largest farm developments in Africa over the next 10 years. And we're running their Uganda operations. They're a very well-established company. They're on the Indonesian stock exchange. They're massive, and they are very corporate, top down, heavy corporate structure. And we're having to integrate with that because we're the scrappy guys on the ground building farms and building supply chains and logistics and everything else. And their CEO came to me when I was down in Jakarta visiting him, and he's just like, "This is so much fun." He's like, "I feel like I'm part of your company."
Right, absolutely.
So it's building that team dynamic at every level. And now letting some of our really young employees, we have a kid that's 20 who's running a whole division for us and going to school. And he asked me Monday, said, "Can I hire a couple interns?" And I said, "Well, you've got your budget. Like, if it's in there, go ahead." And I left yesterday, and he's got 2 guys walking in the office for interviews. I said,
wow.
All right. Give them freedom and see what they can do. So, I like I don't know if it was Steve Jobs or somebody in the tech community, but they said, don't hire good people and stand in their way. Tell them what to do. Hire good people and let them do their job.
Yeah, that's great, Andrew. I'm really glad you touched on the partnership between large companies and startups. And, that's just kind of, one note I'd kind of love to share with the audience, that big companies need startups and startups really need big companies. And I'd encourage you to lean in and try to find that intersection, because that's really, really what can be powerful. Startups need customers and partners and big co's that have scale. And big companies want to think differently and want to think quickly and want to be agile and want to be able to make decisions and change directions. And if we get that marriage right between big companies and startups, a lot of good things happen, really for all constituents. We have 3 or 4 minutes left. If any of you have questions, please jump up to the mic. I would love it if we had a question or two. And if not, I'll kind of keep going. But if you have a question, now would be a great time to jump up to the mic, and we have one. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Claire Bainey, a student from Purdue University, and I was wondering if you have an idea for a startup and you're thinking that it might be a good idea to bring a co-founder on, what would you say are the best things to look for in that new co-founder?
Well, it's great that you're at a university, because that is the best time, in my opinion, I'm biased, to start a company, because you can work on companies and build those co-founder relationships while you're still going to school. So I think you should start now. Looking for co-founders, it'll be important to find someone who really balances your skill set and your personality, because every personality has awesome traits and not awesome traits. And you really want someone that balances those areas where you're not awesome, not just in skills, but as we've really emphasized, in integrity and personality. So I think that would be probably extremely important to do. But it's also, if there's somebody that's just as passionate about what you're working on, go for it. And go do it together, because those passionate co-founders are the ones that will stick around for you in the hardest times in your business.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Just do it. I mean, take a chunk of like a small project that you want to achieve to move to the next level. Do it together. It's the fastest way to figure out what kind of chemistry you're going to have together.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Great question. Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? I'll jump another one in then. Let's talk funding for a moment. And why don't we kind of wrap on this note? What I love about so many things about what we've heard this morning, one of which is I believe all of you are very mission oriented. You're on a mission to change the world and to build something great. And you can actually do it with or without capital. It's just going to be a lot harder without capital. But you can still do it. And if you're mission driven, nothing is going to get in your way. I'd be curious, what lessons learned on the funding path? What's gone well, what hasn't gone well, and how do you even think about capitalizing your business?
We've talked a lot about not just mission, but who you are as a culture. And for us, when we were fundraising, it was really important to understand what our values are and not budge from that. When you're raising, you definitely want to be listening to what everyone's saying as far as business model strategy and market strategy. But we never wanted to move away from the fact that we want to do good and do well. And that meant in the investment landscape, there was going to be some people that didn't understand that and jive with that. But because we held strong on that, we've got a group of investors that really believe in that with us. And it allows us to keep doing what we think is most important at a mission level. So that's for us, being a benefit corporation was sort of a unique experience for us and what we had to do.
Awesome advice, Ellie. Thank you.
100%. Like it's weird to say, but you'll get an opportunity to take to receive cash from investors. But if they don't line up with what your mission is, you're turning down money, and it's the hardest thing to do. It'll be like a dark day because you're not going to know what's going to happen after that, or you know that you only have so much cash left. But then, your team rallies. So that's the other part about the team, though. You bring that back to your team. You say, hey, these investors don't line up with our mission. What do you guys want to do? And if you're all committed to that, everyone's going to make the sacrifice, work those extra hours, push that extra inch every single day to make sure you achieve that mission.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I like the last two questions of what to look for in a co-founder and investor. In many ways, they're the same. They're an extension of your team, and a team that you trust, you respect, your values are aligned, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together, right? Company building is a long journey, and you really want to surround yourself with people that you enjoy and you trust and respect and are going to make you better, and you have common goals. So we are out of time. I hope you enjoyed this panel as much as I did. 4 remarkable young entrepreneurs building really meaningful companies in the ag tech world. I know they're going to be successful. They're going to make the world a better place. Any way we can help them, we should. And if you could join me in giving them a round of applause, I'd really appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.